Hi, and welcome to the Book Beat. I'm Noel Bassiour, and we have three fabulous guests for you today. This is the show where we feature authors talking about their latest books and experts who can help you in the world of writing and publishing so that if you want to write a book yourself in this brave new world of self-publishing, you can do it. Our first guest, Chris Milligan, is going to join us in a minute. He will be our first guest. He has Trine Day Publishing, and he publishes books that many mainstream publishers won't touch. And then we're going to have Jonathan Peters in the second segment. He's the author of Cavemen Can't Market, Attracting, Conversing, and Creating Loyal Customers with Woo Marketing. And then we're going to be joined in the final segment by Serena Jade, and she has written Charismatic Connection, the Authentic Soulmate Experience, about how to find your soulmate. So I want to just, before we bring Chris on, who hopefully is on the phone, not yet, well, we'll hope that he will be in a few minutes, if we may have to call him if he doesn't show up. So people ask a lot of times, is mainstream media controlled by anybody? And in my career as a journalist working for many mainstream magazines, I did not see the so-called control that some people think exists. I did see a few things on the periphery of that, which I'll share with you really quickly. You might also want to check out some comments that Amber Lyon, who is a former CNN investigative journalist, has made online recently, where she claims that when she was reporting from Bahrain, that CNN suppressed some of her stories. That's kind of interesting. My experience was I did do a story once for one of the top magazines in the world. We're talking multi-million readership. And it was a story on healthcare where I interviewed celebrities and got their take on what their ideal healthcare system would look like. And it was balanced because as a journalist, I balanced liberal and conservative points of view. I later heard, when I saw how watered down the story had been, I wondered what happened. So my editor told me about how the head editor of the magazine, the senior editor, one of the senior editors, had to kind of go upstairs to corporate and really fight for this story because they felt that possibly it was a bit slanted one way or the other, and they didn't like that point of view. And it ended up that a lot was cut from the story and it was watered down. So that was kind of a peripheral experience. And basically, corporate policy, I found, does have a lot to do with some of the content of magazines in a very subtle way. And the other thing that I saw was when I interviewed Andy Rooney and asked him what he would really like to be doing for CBS because he was going to retire soon. And he said, you know, big government is in bed with big business, and I would like to do special reports for CBS on that, how that happens. And then he said, but they won't let me do it. So I ran into it in kind of a peripheral way. So you might want to, though, check out Amber Lyon's comments and see what you think of that. And I'm waiting to see if Chris Milligan, our guest, is going to be on the phone with us. Is he there yet? No? Okay, if he doesn't join us, then we'll just give more time to our other guests. And possibly if Chris calls in, we'll bring those guests on, we'll bring him on later in the last segment of the show. Are you someone's trying to reach him, right? Yeah. Okay. So let me just talk a little bit about writing your own book really quickly while we're trying to reach Chris on the phone. This is a show where we feature guest experts at the top of the show in all the different areas of that you need to know about if you're going to write a book. And this is a very exciting time in publishing because you can practically, you wouldn't want to do this, but you can practically have a book overnight. With e-publishing, all the opportunities there are, it hardly costs anything at all to format your book for, say, Kindle or e-readers, different kinds of digital platforms like the Sony Reader. There are people who will format your book for these platforms for as low as $35, and we've had some of these experts on the show. So if you check the archives at LA Talk Live, you'll see at the top of the show we've had a lot of guest experts in all areas of how to get published and how to promote your book. That's a question that's often asked because it's easy to write a book and get it published these days because you can do all that yourself. But then what do you do? That's what authors often ask me, and I always go like, well, first of all, get a website for the book. That's really, really important. And if you have a website already, you can have a page on it for your book, or you can get a separate URL with the name of your book. A lot of times you'll put book at the end of the title. So for example, the website for my book is spacepatrolbook.com. That's a book on early television. So a lot of people are doing that. And also remember, if you already have an existing website, a really good thing to do is put excerpts on from your book on the site and break it off where there's a cliffhanger. So you might have like little excerpts that you think are the most exciting part of your book. And then just when the reader wants more, you'll notice that Amazon kind of does this sometimes. They break it off. And of course, you want to buy the book at that point. And another thing that I recommend to people is often set up a Facebook page for your book. You can do that as an author. You can have a Facebook author page. And what that does is it establishes a community around the book where people can comment on it. For example, a guest that we're going to have with us in a little bit later in the show, Serena Jade, talks about soulmates, how to find your soulmate, and people have a lot of thoughts about that. So, you could build a whole, Facebook page around that and have people read your book and comment and agree or disagree, but just start a dialogue there. So that's something that I often tell authors. And then go out and, if you watch Talk Up Your Biz, which is the show that Susan Levin and I do together at LA Talk Live, you'll see a lot of ways that you can go out and promote your book as well and be proactive in getting speaking engagements. We talked a lot about that on Talk Up Your Biz that's dated today, September 2nd. If you check out that show, you'll see a lot about how to go out and be proactive and promote yourself for whatever you're doing, whether it's a book or you have a business or whatever it is. So, has our guest showed up yet? No? Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you to check out his website, and hopefully he will show up. It's TrineDayPublishing.com. And what Chris Milligan has done here is he has set up a publishing house that publishes books that often mainstream publishers pass on. And this is where you get into the fine line between what is legitimate and what isn't. Now that we do have this option of self-publishing, mainstream publishers are afraid to touch a lot of books that might be labeled conspiracy theories or sort of off-the-wall takes on things. They don't want to get sued. They also just want to be very, very, they want to play it safe. And so it's been hard to get published. And what Chris Milligan has done with Trine Day is actually he's got some best-selling authors that were with traditional publishers. And yet when they came up with something that was really off the wall, their publisher or their agent wouldn't touch it. And so he established Trine Day Publishing, and if you check out their site, you can see a lot of interesting things there. For example, there's a book written by Lee Harvey Oswald's girlfriend that really gives you a lot of information about Lee Harvey Oswald that you didn't know. And a lot of it's factual. It can be checked out. There's another one by Howard Hunt's son, E. Howard Hunt's son, St. John Hunt. Supposedly a deathbed confession by E. Howard Hunt as to who really assassinated John F. Kennedy. So again, you can take it with a grain of salt. You have to use your judgment. But these are books that read fairly well and perhaps are worth some attention. So we're going to take a break a bit early, and we're going to be able to give more time to our other guests. And so we'll see you here on the other end of the intermission, just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned. And after the break, we are going to be joined by Jonathan Peters. And he says that the old way of marketing a product or service was to swing your message like a club, sort of caveman style. And you kind of hit prospects over the head until they fell to their knees, just very much like a caveman. But times have changed, and that tactic no longer works. Although I can tell you, I hear a lot of radio ads where I really do feel like I'm being beat up. So I think some people haven't given up on that. But how should you really be marketing your product or service to get the best results? Well, we'll find out when Jonathan Peters joins us after the break. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. This is the Book Beat.
Hey, shout us out. What's the count? I'm your host, Ferran Dozier. I'm inviting you to join me on WDC Radio every Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time as we discuss community topics around health, sports, and entertainment. So don't forget to shout us out. What's the count? On WDC Radio, only on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, R&B, or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we're more than just talk. What's the count?
Hi, this is Elena, inviting you to join me every Wednesday at noon for Elena's Beauty Talk and more, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, R&B, or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, and welcome back to the Book Beat. I'm Noel Bassiour, and that bumper music is by my brother, Rick Fleischman, by the way, who co-hosted Talk of Your Biz with me earlier this evening. And we have a fabulous guest who's going to join us, has joined us, Jonathan Peters. Hi.
Hi.
And you have traveled the world, challenging organizations to communicate more effectively with their prospects and customers. And Jonathan has spoken before audiences from Augusta, Maine to Melbourne, Australia. And you're an adjunct professor at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas, and where you help aspiring business students to prepare for their careers. And Jonathan has written Cavemen Can't Market, Attracting, Conversing, and Creating Loyal Customers with Woo Marketing. That's spelled W-O-O, marketing. So let me ask you first, before we go into Woo marketing, what got you fascinated about marketing? Why does that interest you?
Oh, that's a great question. It's that bridging between what is meant, or what the message that we want to get, and there's often that disconnect between the message that organizations want to give and then how it's received and what actually people want to hear. And so I've been a writer on the copywriting side for years, decades at this point. And so that's where just honing the craft really drew me into the actual marketing.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because when you're copywriting, so you were writing ad copy, right?
Yeah.
And so you really know, because I've written a bit of it too.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
When you're on that end of it, then you're really close to the message that, the business is trying to get out, right?
And then aware when it doesn't work well.
Yeah, was there a gap? Did you find like a gap a lot of times?
Yeah, and that's where we talk about, I'm talking about attraction. What attracts a organization to their industry, to their product, is usually not what's attracting the people they're trying to reach. And so it's that disconnect that really got me interested in looking at that, how to bridge that that gap between what we want people to hear and what they actually want to hear.
And so, what did you discover? Like, why weren't the businesses reaching the people, getting their message out?
Short answer is not understanding who they're trying to reach and narrowing the market. A lot of, well, on that side of things, too often trying to reach too broad of an audience, and especially nowadays where we can really niche in and narrow in on people. One of my maxims is I always say, when you speak to everyone, you speak to no one.
Right, right. You know, as a book coach, I often ask people like, well, who's your target audience? And they go like, oh, it's a gift book. I hate to hear that.
Yeah.
It's for everybody,
Yeah,
you know. Yeah, everybody from, you know, kids to, you know, to what, no age limit. And my heart sinks because no book is really
For everyone. Yeah.
Right?
So I always say one of the largest companies in the world is Walmart, but there's a lot of people that do not shop at Walmart. So,
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they would be really close to being for
Yeah.
everyone, right? So what? Well, you have an interesting concept, like you say. We've moved from caveman marketing. That's where they hit you over the head with the message.
It's taking that analogy and you hit that because it really comes back from the old days, even all the way back in radio, of just taking the club and just hitting prospects or a market over and over and over again until eventually they fall to their knees and buy.
It's just like the annoying car dealership.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, running the commercial, and then the interrupt marketing, where going back to the old days of radio, where the family would be around listening to their favorite serial, and then all of a sudden there'd be that break. And then, of course, in television, we've had that break. And then there was this little thing called where they cold call you.
Yeah.
And so you'd be eating dinner with your family, and all of a sudden the phone would ring. And now with the technologies, we don't do that. People don't watch commercials anymore. They filter them out and don't even listen to their telephone ring. And so that's where that movement changed over from just hitting over the head to then the analogy moving to what I call courtship marketing, which is where we are now, where we have to woo them, we have to bring them into us.
Because we have more choice now, right? Because we can, you know, we can control our information more, right?
Yeah, the consumer's now in charge of the message, and radically so with social media. It's not so much what we as an organization say about ourselves, it's what they say about us. And that's a lot of that change.
That's a really interesting comment.
Yeah.
Actually, it is, isn't it? What people, I guess, organizations now with image, they have to really watch that, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, what is woo marketing, and what is wooing, like relationship?
Yeah. Yeah. Think of relationship marketing. So, to continue the analogy, I'd say a young man, the old story of a young man trying to attract a young woman to be his betrothed or to court her over to that process. And so to change it, to work through changes the stages of marketing. And so again, it's not, he doesn't just run up and say, will you marry me, to just a random person he finds attractive. Now she's in charge. She has many suitors. She decides who she wants to be with, to follow that analogy.
So then that's true. So what does the business now have to do differently? Since the customer's more in charge, right?
Customer's in charge.
Yeah.
So I always say there's 3 stages, and the first stage is the attraction stage. And because no relationship really starts unless we're attracted to that person or the product or the company. And the problem that most organizations face is that they put out there, which we were just talking about, they put out there what they find attractive. And so to stretch the analogy, or to push the analogy a little bit, if a young man's wanting to attract a young woman, he wouldn't want to put out there what he finds attractive. In other words, if he's trying to attract a young woman, he probably doesn't want to dress up as an attractive woman to attract the woman that he's trying to attract. Instead, he needs to portray the qualities that she would find attractive. So it starts there with the attraction stage, stage 1. Stage 2 then is to move it from just looking good to being in the conversation stage. And again, that's where the new media with social media and all the new technologies really draw us into it, is because now we converse with our customers, our clients, our prospects, which in the old days we didn't do. There was that disconnect. Here's a television, here's a commercial. And so now where the conversation takes place. And the same thing applies if you've ever been to a networking event or a cocktail party and you get stuck with that person that just talks about themselves the whole time.
Right.
You don't get really excited about that. You don't say, well, this monologue is so exciting. Can we meet tomorrow for coffee so you can
Right.
continue to talk at me?
To sell me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what's happening, though. Especially you look at how companies are using social media. They're just using it as another place for a press release. And then so second stage then leads to the third stage, which is the commitment stage. And here it's small commitments lead to larger commitments.
So the 3 stages are, stage 1 is
attraction, conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and then commitment.
So does this mean, for example, like how would a company use social media in stage 1? Would they reach out to a customer to try to establish some kind of connection or dialogue?
Not so much in social media. It would be different. It'd be in the interacting, to be in the play out there in the market. It's usually taking place more effectively in the communication stage, reaching out. And again, it's just because there's so many options out there. How do we find something? But once we have loyal customers, which come in through the commitment stage, when they begin to talk about us, then those people become ambassadors for us, and then that's where the success comes in. On the attraction side, is that my friends found this company attractive.
Word of mouth, kind of. But now it's word of mouth with thousands of people, right?
Exactly.
So kind of, can you walk us through, like, give us an example of a company you've helped, because you coach people in this, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
What did they do that was like this new way of doing it?
What's been really effective, I worked with an organization recently, was actually starting groups. In this case, it was Facebook, but that's where their customers were. And again, we have to be where their customers are, and that's changed a little bit. And so by starting a group where then the people were interacting, and they set it up in such a way that they could converse, but in the background. It wasn't obvious that they were controlling it. In other words, again, to create the analogy, they had this space where people then could interact.
Now what was the product? What were they trying to sell?
Yeah, I don't know if I have their permission
to
really.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, make up something.
Yeah, but it was a retail product.
A retail.
Yeah,
okay.
so they base it around fashion, and so that, and this wasn't just like, hey, we like these T-shirts or whatever. It was about what their target audience would be talking about. It wasn't about, look how great we are, but here's what my target audience wants to discuss. And then so they created a space for that discussion, and then they just participate in it like they were just part of just one other person in the space.
So they got
conversing.
A bunch of people together, and they were discussing these T-shirts?
Yeah,
or?
well, no, it wasn't T-shirts. It was a side. It was and that's
I'm
why
just
I don't.
using that.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, for example, they would.
Well, we can use this a little bit. We can push it. It was in the extreme sports segment, so we're just discussing extreme sports. And here's this company in the background, not sponsoring it, not running ads, not going after these people, but just kind of saying, oh, here's a good shot that we saw. This was really interesting. Hey, guys, did you see this?
Kind of being helpful.
Yeah.
Like sort of.
Yeah, and just kind of just participating. They were just there. And in that case, it was that we usually buy from our friends, or people buy from those they know, like, and trust, to use the old saying. And so here's something that's there, and then who are these people? And it just flowed relatively successfully.
So like the rep from the company was there, and then they felt comfortable with this rep, and yeah, it's very much like kind of like when you go on LinkedIn, right? If you join a group and you can't really push your services there, but you can offer helpful suggestions.
Exactly.
Like, if I were a book coach and let's say I joined like a group for aspiring authors, and then by the way, did you ever try this or something like that, right? And I'm not overtly selling, but is it more like I'd be just establishing that relationship? Right?
Yeah, and in that case, you're coming into the space as this. And the difference on say LinkedIn than say Facebook is that you're very aware who's sponsoring the group in LinkedIn versus Facebook. You can set up groups without making it obvious that you're the one that's promoting it.
I see.
Yeah, because you've seen that on the author side. That if I'm offering services to an aspiring author, then if it's my group, then they would be suspicious that the reason I'm there is to sell them a product or a service.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I know there's certain definite boundaries and rules in this
exactly.
new brave new world. So tell us more about Woo marketing, like how it's different and maybe some examples without being specific of things you've done for people.
I work with first thing that we really push for is what I call Debbie Diet Coke, and this is based on there was a television station back in the 90s, I believe it was, but in San Antonio, Texas, and they created this, we call it customer persona. So instead of talking to everyone, we just talked to very, very specific people. And so Debbie they created this character. They knew exactly her age. They knew that she was a stay-at-home mom, how old her children were, how they were doing in school, what they wanted to do after school. She drove the minivan. Her husband drove a car. The minivan was paid for. They knew everything about her down to that she was 35 pounds. No, not 35. She was 15 pounds overweight and preferred Diet Coke over Diet Pepsi. And so they were very concentrating on that. So that's what we sit down and we create that first. And so it depends on the product. Sometimes we'll target a woman and target a man, but we're very, very niched into it. And then delve into Dr. Stephen Reese's work with the 16 motivators. And so we define what motivates these folks.
What are some of the 16?
16 motivators. Dr. Reese, what he did is he looked at these are all intrinsic, hardwired into us. And the problem that he saw, the disconnect, is that if I'm high in one and you're low in the exact same one, we're disconnected.
It's not a match.
Yeah, I see myself as wrong. I see myself as right and you as wrong. You see the opposite, that I must be wrong. And it's not right or wrong, it's just different. And again, that's where a lot of times organizations don't realize that what they believe is attractive, what they believe will motivate their target audience is not the case.
So do these 16 motivators, do they have to match? In other words, the motivation of the company has to match a motivation of the potential customer?
I would say the message more than...
The message.
Yeah, because we purchase things for different reasons. The analogy I use is in the insurance and the finance world. Sitting down with my finance guy almost a year ago now, I guess, and he was talking about, because there were certain things that were going on in life about how I need to be saving for my retirement and make sure this is taken care of and put everything in order.
Don't go to Starbucks and spend $5 on a latte.
And that's what happened. I shut him down. I said, everything you're telling me makes me want to leave right now.
Oh, wow.
I'm surprised I lived this long. I didn't think I was going to make it past 40, and so he was able to I just talked to him about it, and he said, he switched his message and he said, imagine this, imagine your friend calls you and says, let's go to Barcelona and run with the Bulls this weekend. And you said, hold on a second. You go and you check out your fund and you said, yeah, sure enough, I'm going to fly over there first class, stay in La Ramblas and run with the Bulls. And he said, how's that sound? I said, that's great. And he said, how much money can we put in there? And I said, let's start a fund, put $1,000 in.
And I might not even need it after the trip.
Yeah, exactly.
Ever.
Yeah.
Because I won't be around.
Yeah. So when it came to the saving part of things, because that's one of the 16 is savings. That's not a big motivator for me. It is for him. That's why he's in the work that he does. He's very focused on making sure that we're all set up and that we save. But there was a disconnect between his message and my message.
I see.
In this case, it was repelling me. I didn't want to be at the table with him.
Yeah. And so what are some of the other motivators?
There's so a lot of times companies, especially business leaders, there's a disconnect between what's driving, say, an entrepreneur or a high-level person. A lot of times is what we call power of will, and that's where I'm in charge of my own destiny. And so that would be a motivator that's often in conflict with acceptance, which would be more the frontline people wanting appreciation, wanting to know that other people around me are accepting of me. And so that's where the boss forgetting to say, hey, I really appreciate what you did today. Thanks for going the extra mile.
Because they're not totally in charge of their destiny at that company.
Yeah.
But what they can get is noticed or appreciation, right?
Yeah.
So it's like two totally different perspectives, right?
Yeah, because the executive doesn't need that, doesn't even want it, and may not even like someone patting them on the back.
Right.
And so that's the classic you'll often see in especially larger companies, and that disconnect between two motivators are often in conflict together.
Is this what your book deals with? Like, do you go into the 16 motivators?
It's
or?
mentioned in it. It's more what I do with organizations and companies, just because it gets really complicated, and when it comes to language and that's used in the setting and all of those things. So it's definitely mentioned. And it's kind of a corner piece of what I do with organizations. Not kind of, it is.
And can this help like a small entrepreneur, or just a solo entrepreneur?
Right? Yeah. That's actually more of the target market for the book is the smaller person.
Now, as a journalist, I want to ask you a tough question.
Sure.
Get the other side. So I looked at your blurb on Amazon. So I want you to explain the psychology of what you have on Amazon to me, because I want to understand this. So you say, let's be honest, you are reading this to find a reason not to purchase my book.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, I was predisposed to maybe, I didn't have any negative thoughts, but I found myself like not matching that. Then you say, if you really wanted to get to know me, you'd visit my website, and then you give it, which is, so tell me the strategy there, because put me off a little bit.
Okay, well, good.
I got to ask the tough question.
Yeah, no, it's the idea is because it's an edgy piece, and I'm edgy when I'm in front of organizations when I'm speaking, and so the concept is that when people start reading the fine print, they're actually trying to find a way to move away from it. And so that's actually when I talk about the second stage, conversation stage, a lot of that is trying to find out what is wrong with this person. In other words, I'm attracted to him or her, so I'm attracted to the person, I'm engaging in conversation. The reason it's conversation is what's wrong. He's too good to be true, she's too good to be true.
So you were trying to like beat me to it, sort of, right? To sort of before I...
Yeah, you're trying to find a typo or trying to find some reason to discount. So let's move forward.
Yeah, but I really wasn't.
Yeah, but it's part of the book. It's one of those,
It's interesting. I just wondered, like, well, that's interesting. I have to tell you, it was different. And it did, it got me interested. So I guess that was the ultimate work, right? Before we just have a couple minutes here, but what's the stupidest piece of advertising copy you ever had to write?
For me to write?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, this is good. Didn't put me on the spot on it. But it was it was a insurance product, and there was that total disconnect, and the people that they were going after were, again, these athletic type folks and cutting edge, and all they would talk about is what your dependents are going to get, what your inheritance is going to be. I was like, these people probably don't have children. But that was their extra pitch. Why we're better than our competitors is your children and loved ones will be taken care of. And I'm like, this audience doesn't care.
Right.
It's not that they don't care, but that's not what's driving them.
Wow.
Is protecting their family.
Yeah, because
if it were, they wouldn't be, engaged in scary sports.
So it led you to really develop this whole, really start thinking about it, which is, because a lot of times as a copywriter, when you're writing for other people, it can get really frustrating. And you really did something with it. So, what's the best way for people to contact you?
Best is my website's jonathanpetersphd.com. So it's the PhD is important. The DJ got there before I did, and I always say he's the better looking one. So
that's true.
JonathanPetersPhD.com.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. And the book is Cavemen Can't Market. That's available on Amazon. Right. Yep. Thank you so much. This has been really interesting.
Great. Appreciate it.
And listening out there, get the book, take the tips. This is a new slant on things here. Have you met your soulmate yet? Or did that not work out if you did meet them and you need to meet another one? Is there a market for used soulmates? I often wonder that, but I digress. Serena Jade is the author of Charismatic Connection, the Authentic Soulmate Experience. And she'll join us after the break to give us her take on attracting that special person into your life. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere. This is the Book Beat on LA Talk Live.
Hey everyone, this is Richard Carr, Business Relations Manager for LA Talk Live. Did you know social media produces almost double the marketing leads of trade shows, telemarketing, direct mail, or even pay-per-click ads? And that about 46% of all online users count on social media when making that ever-important purchase decision. Hey, if you feel lost when it comes to social media, Top Tier Media can help you. Top Tier Media specializes in social media management and blogger outreach for beauty, fashion, health, and lifestyle brands. To learn more, go to www.toptiermedia.com. That's www.toptiermedia.com. Top Tier Media, the official social media marketing company of LA Talk Live and the Talk Live Broadcast Network.
Mountain Valley Spring Water, since 1871, has been bottled at the source in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Twice named the best tasting water in the world, Mountain Valley water is naturally alkaline and bottled in glass, providing the perfect blend of nature's minerals, giving you a crisp, clean taste. To start your home and office delivery in Southern California, call us at 1-800-499-9982 or visit us online at www.mountainvalleywaterla.com. New customers will receive their first 2 5-gallon bottles free. Mountain Valley Water, the official sponsor of Here's to Your Health with Josh Lane on LA Talk Live.
Hi, and welcome back to the Book Beat. I'm Jean Noel Bassiour, and I have here with me Serena Jade. She is an author. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's nice for you to invite me here.
Oh, well, thank you for coming. You're an author, speaker, world traveler, and consultant for the body, mind, and soul, whose travels have taken her across the globe from the Egyptian pyramids to the Taj Mahal in India. And you like to make spiritual matters practical.
Yes.
Right? And Serena has written a book. She's the author of Charismatic Connection, The Authentic Soulmate Experience. And when I first saw your materials that you sent in, because you reached out to us, which was really what we advise people to do. And I didn't realize, even from your materials, that you were a rider. You had been a rider groom in the horse racing industry.
Yes, when I was younger.
When you were younger, yeah. I mean, when I saw that, I thought, then, you have a really unique perspective. Like, you don't meet very many people.
It was my soul's passion.
Really?
Yeah, I grew up in a very dysfunctional household. And when I was younger, I was depressed and suicidal. And I wasn't going to survive. I really wasn't going to survive. So I knew I had to tap into something deeper within myself. Mm. My father was, his passion was horse racing. And I naturally became involved with it also. Mm. And I was following my bliss, as Joseph Campbell would say. Mm. And it really, really saved me from committing suicide. Mm. If I didn't have that, I would have definitely have not survived. So it was something to attach to, something to look forward to every day.
Wow. And did you want to be a jockey?
I did. I really wanted to become a jockey. But that didn't work out. But I really have a terrific story from my experiences there.
Right. So you've written this book about sort of how to find your soulmate, but you tell your story.
Yes.
You met Chris Antley.
Chris Antley. He was a well-known jockey in the horse racing industry in the late 80s, early 90s. He died 12 years ago right here in Pasadena. Mm. When we first saw each other, we instantly recognized each other. Mm. Now, I know that might sound cliche, but it really wasn't. First of all, I never heard of the compound of words, soulmates, when we were crossing paths back in the late 80s, early 90s. Never heard of the words. Mm. So he was much more spiritually aware than I was. He would come right up to me and stare right into my eyes, and we would be mesmerized with each other. It was sublime, outreaching human comprehension.
And that is how we imagine it. We imagine meeting that person who will make that kind of eye contact with you, right?
Eye contact is the window to the soul.
Yeah.
And as I was explaining, I was following my soul's passion. So I led an unconventional life my peers were, following along with society, and I was following my own path, which is not easy in this world.
Right.
Definitely not easy.
Right. And sometimes, you know what, coming from, I can relate to your story because I ran away from home when I was 15 because I had crazy household too. And so, but, sometimes you get to invent yourself in a new way.
Yes.
Right. When that, and you don't have to follow the pack.
Right. Right.
So did you find that? Or?
Yeah, but I think it's very hard.
It is hard
to not follow the path.
It is. But you became an individualist, sort of.
Right. Right. And I experienced this. Extremely. It's really surreal, sublime. I'm telling you, it's really, really sublime. I was spellbound by him, and he was mesmerized by me. It was really, really intense. Our encounters were like something very magical, but there was a problem. He came from a lot of dysfunction. I come from a lot of dysfunction, and that kept us apart. We would never have, survived together if we did come together. So my message is really to really be an explorer of your own personal history, because you will be like Chris and I, and will not come together, and that is really, really, very frustrating.
Even though you both felt you would kind of. You were soulmates, you were right for each other, even if you didn't know that term. Are you saying that the relationship couldn't work because you both were too dysfunctional, and then did you have to separate and go out and learn some life lessons before you could get back together?
Well, when we stopped crossing paths, I didn't know this, but I was spiritually awakening. I got psychological help, and I really was making a study of me and my family history. And I was really spiritually awakening myself. My father had died, and I started to really question life. Like, how could we be here for such a short period of time, and that's it? And I didn't have a faith that this thing called the soul lives on. So I had to really figure it out myself. And in that process, I was really getting in touch with my own soul and really understanding that. And my soul has been my guiding light throughout my whole life. Because if it wasn't for this deep, deep place within me, I would not survive. I would not be here right now.
How does it feel to be soul guided? In other words, how does that, in your everyday life, what does that feel like? Does that influence how you make a decision, for example, or a choice?
Well, yeah, it's like I never give up, because I know that I need what I need to do. And this is my purpose. So I was following my passion, and this is my purpose, is to really, really bring this out in the open. And so this is not really something that is superficial. It was really, really deep. And why we weren't together, because it was so deep. It's a very high place, and if our lower nature is in disarray, there is just no way it could ever be.
So you and Chris separated, or went separate ways?
Separate ways, right. And then he died right here in Pasadena in December of 2000.
So did you get back together before he died or not?
When we stopped crossing paths, I was spiritually awakening. And then I started to dream about him. And I'm like wondering, why am I dreaming about him? It didn't make any sense. I stopped with horse racing. Chris Antley was just so far away from my conscious mind. And then one day out of the blue, on May 1st, 1999, I said, I want to watch the Kentucky Derby. And I put on the TV, and Chris is riding a horse named Charismatic. And I intuitively knew that he was going to win the Kentucky Derby. And they won the Kentucky Derby, Chris and Charismatic. And right after that, I realized, oh my God, we are spiritually connected. We are deeply connected. And which it's fully conscious now. I can't go back to sleep anymore with our connection. It's fully conscious. We are spiritually connected. I don't know if you know the quote by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Right.
Now human beings having a spiritual experience.
Right.
So it only makes sense that we were connecting at that spiritual level. But our human experience was not really up to par with that. So when he won the Kentucky Derby with Charismatic, and incidentally, charismatic comes from the Greek word charismata, which means a gift from the divine. And I was being shown a vision, was truly inspired vision a vision of him winning the Kentucky Derby. I was dreaming about him, and now
And you
he's
had the
giving me-
impulse to turn the television on, right?
Exactly, out of the blue. I tell you, that was out of the blue.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I just felt like watching it. I did not watch a Kentucky Derby since 1995, and I just, out of the blue, that I just felt like watching the Kentucky Derby that
That's
year.
such a great example of some of the non-physical teachers like Abraham Hicks that I study say that when you're connected to source energy or to your soul or your inner being, that you will get impulses, that this is how law of attraction works, you'll get impulses to do things like that, like turn the television on at that moment.
Right.
It sounds like you were really connected.
Right. And, the power of our souls attracted us, but the law of attraction repelled us because our personalities were not ready for this intense
Right, because law of attraction is attracts like to like, and you guys were really different, right?
Right. But no, we were the same, but our minds were totally not up to par. We had low self-worth. We were in disarray. We were just so messed up. We had, we were just suicidal. We didn't want to live. I mean, all the stuff that needs to be worked out.
So this is what inspired you to work on yourself and to travel and to
my connection with Chris?
Yes.
Well, it was my own spiritual awakening that really I was following my soul. My soul. And I know it might sound, like I said, I'm going to say it sounds cliche, but it's a really, really deep place within, and it's like what the Buddhists say, it's a witness. You're witnessing your life, and it's being that witness and understanding that touch within yourself, that really spark of the divine within yourself, and following that. And that's what I've done throughout my life, was really to follow that spark. And it's been helping me and keeping me here.
A lot of people watching this are probably asking, well, how can I get in touch with my inner spark? Do you think that's possible for everybody?
Yes, I would say become an explorer of your own personal history, because then you will understand what the personality is in the soul if you become an explorer of your own personal history.
And how do you do that? What are the different, I know there's different ways to do that.
Well, I would say one thing, go to psychotherapy. Start talking about yourself. Just start talking. That's how I did it. Just start talking.
That's how you did it?
Right. Just start talking. I would sit in the therapist's chair and I'm like, okay, so what do we talk about today? And then, after months, then, you start, unraveling things. But, it was totally, under the unconscious of
Did
everything.
it take you a long time to get to the really deep stuff or important stuff? Or
I would say it, it did, yes. Yes. But, it's you're peeling away that onion and getting to the source of the whole dysfunction.
And how did you kind of recommend traveling if you can? How did the travel help?
Oh, I love the world. So traveling just makes you open to the people of the world. My goal is to really, unite the tribes of the world, to be one with the world. And really, really, the world is such a great place. And, just try to be the explorer of our world here.
This sounds very different from, when you were suicidal and really at the end of your rope. This is like an amazing transformation.
Yes.
So this came from, but it came from, like, you and Chris kind of came together for a brief period.
We never came. We only crossed paths
and recognized each other, sort of with those looks, right? This soulmate type looks.
Right.
And from that, this is what really kind of turned your life around, right? To become a seeker and explorer and feeling like your vibration was kind of off and had to...
Right, because we were following our soul's passion.
Right.
So after we stopped crossing paths, then I just followed my passion towards personal growth and then spiritual growth. And then and then educating myself about soulmates. It goes back to Plato times. Plato talks about celestial love and common love, and it goes back all the way back to 2,500 years ago. Just the traveling to Greece was like an eye-opening experience. Touching the ground that Plato walked was like he was a very important teacher of mine. Plato, I love Plato. Very deep and profound. Was very in touch with the soul. But he lived 2,500 years ago when women didn't have any rights. We live in a perfect time where women could really begin to be an explorer of their own personal history and make themselves whole. to really have this deep connection with somebody else.
And so
with the soul, with the soulmate.
right. And so, soulmates, I remember the term, I think it was made popular by Jess, I can't remember his
Stern.
name. Jess
I
Stern,
read that
right?
book.
Wasn't he the first one to use it? Writing about...
Edgar Casey, right?
Yeah, writing about Edgar Casey, and then writing about J.Z. Knight meeting... because I met J.Z. Knight and Jeff, because I did a story on them, who was her soulmate, according to Jess Stern. J.Z. Knight channels Ramtha. And I think that Jess Stern mentioned that when they met, they were soulmates, and gave different examples. But he kind of started that, didn't he? Okay.
Yeah, I think the whole realm of the dawning of the new age in the 60s.
And then it was became a really trendy term. You know?
And I think it's just used so much that I think anybody, thinks they're with their soulmate, and it's really, the mate to the soul. It's your immortal mate.
Now, what if you're with somebody? A lot of people will go well, maybe I missed the boat a little bit on this. I'm not sure if I'm with my soulmate, or we're not getting along so well. We thought we were soulmates. So I don't know if your book covers this, but what would your advice be? Are people who were once in love or are still together, if they feel that soulmate energy kind of dissipating, is there a way to renew it, or,
Well, I would say, a soulmate is really connecting at the soul level. And it's really for a purpose. Now, I really feel Chris and I were pioneers in this. So, if you're not spiritually in touch with your own soul, then you really can't be with a soulmate if you're not really in touch. So you just have a common love, which is fine. You can make that a great relationship. But a soulmate is really the mate to our spiritual mates, to our spiritual self. That's really, really what it comes down to. And it's, it's not common. And you have to be following your soul's passion. You have to be in touch with your soul to somewhat, level that I had. And Chris was following his soul's passion. We were connected from our soul's passion. And that's how we cross paths. If I followed my peers, I would have never met Chris. So that would be my answer to somebody who is with somebody. You can't make somebody a soulmate.
Right.
Either they are or aren't.
Yeah, well, that was my question. It's kind of like,
right.
Is there ways to...
It's like, I love you, you're perfect, now change. You can't now make somebody
a
soulmate.
Right.
Yeah, you maybe touch their soul, but you really can't make somebody.
So I guess intuitively, if you know it's wrong or not working, then you would follow your inner guidance and see what to do next, right?
Right, but you could be not working at the personality level. A lot of power struggles. That's the whole issue of transforming your self to wholeness, is to overcome those power struggles. So now you are meeting with the soul, both people, and then overcoming those power struggles, and then you're really living a heaven on earth life.
And is that what the book does? Do you tell the story of your journey and the story of meeting Chris?
Yes.
And then do you help readers kind of see how to,
I would like readers to come on a journey with me, because this is only one part of my story. So this is soulmates, from soulmates to a personal growth relationship, and then to my deepest, most profound eternal love, which I haven't met yet. So I would like readers to take a journey with me.
And so the best way to ready yourself to meet your soulmate is to know who you are, right, at a very deep level.
Yes.
And your soul connection.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
And is that
That's
what you call the charismatic connection?
Yes, because charismatic is coming from the gift from the divine, and the gift from the divine is your soul. The soul, the non-physical part of you. It's not physical. And I think we as a society place it as physical, something you could touch. And you can't touch it. It's intangible.
There are some people that have a lot of trouble bridging that gap. I definitely feel that connection, but I know also that I talk to people who just go I can't see it, and so it's hard for me to believe in. What do you tell those people?
I'd say you have to kind of open up your the third eye, your intuition, to truly really try to trust and have faith And and again, be an explorer of your own personal history, because then you will understand it within your own being. Just by telling somebody you have a soul, that's not going to really make them have that connection.
So start
You
with
have to-
yourself,
Right,
and
right.
really get in. Are you saying, like, do you really get into yourself at a deeper level? And is that what you're kind of recommending? That somehow you find a way to unlock, that key?
From the psychological to the spiritual. Absolutely. Years ago, 100 years ago, they were never really separated. So if you could really combine the two and really know the difference between the psychological and the spiritual.
What is the difference? How would you define it?
Well, the difference would be our personalities are outward persona, and the soul is deep in.
So the soul is not your personality.
No.
Okay.
No.
So you're looking for something else that's kind of, because it's interesting for a lot of people who've never thought of that. They're looking for, they think they are their personality, right? But they're looking
Right.
for, so do you, how do you do that? Meditation? Or
Well, meditation definitely helps, but I found in my own life it's the psychological understanding of my own. Like, just coming here, I was really, really nervous, and that's my personality,
your default kind of.
Right, but my soul knows what it needs to do here, but the soul is trapped by the personality. So the personality has to have a higher self-worth for the soul to come out and to really express itself.
So did you sort of listen to your soul and go, like, there must be a purpose that I'm coming here and doing this? Or did you?
Oh,
listen to that?
absolutely, because it's my purpose to bring this out.
To spread the word.
Right.
Yeah, because if you don't do this, then people don't know about the book, and
Right.
you have to do all this stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm following my purpose, which is very different from my peers.
Right. So what are, we just have a couple minutes left. So what are, I hate to use like quick tips in terms of, but you do like to make, I know, spirituality practical, which is a really good thing. Do you coach people? Like, what are some of the things you run into if you coach people? What would be a tip where you see a lot of people stuck in a certain way, and what could you
What would
tell?
be the tip? Well, again, I see people stuck in their dysfunction. There's so much dysfunction out there that I really, people have these defense mechanisms that keep them from their own potential. So I'm going to come back again to be the explorer of your own personal history. That's where I see.
And by
people
that you
stuck
mean,
at.
when you say be explorer of your own personal history, you mean like your psychological history?
Your
or
family history,
your family-
psychologically, your family history.
Everything.
Right, not just the biological, but the psychological, your family history.
Meaning going back to your childhood, kind of?
Yes.
And really facing stuff.
Go back to come to the present and make this present the gift. Yeah.
So going back into the past ultimately will lead you into living in the present, sort of?
To live a heaven on earth life. There's so many people out there suffering,
Yeah.
emotionally suffering. So many people out there, and we just cover it up with any kind of substances we could find. Food being number one.
True. Yeah. A lot of people go to that.
We don't think of the same thing as drugs or food, but they are.
Do you feel Chris's presence?
I did when he first crossed over. He was in my dreams constantly when he first crossed over. We were connected with the soul, so it'd be only natural for his soul to be connected with my soul.
I'm sure he's aware of what you're doing. Well, thank you so much. What's the best way to contact you?
Through my website at serenajade.com.
Spell it out. SER.
SERENAJADE.com.
Okay. And the book is on Amazon?
Is on Amazon. Grab a copy today.
Charismatic Connection. That's the name of your book, The Authentic Soulmate Experience. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next week, same time, same station for the Book Beat. And here's your homework. This is the show with homework. Remember, your homework is to find a good book. And if you can't find one, start thinking about writing the book that you want to read yourself. Don't go yet. It's just, we're not quite old. So find a good book, and if you can't find one, then write it yourself or start thinking about writing it yourself. And see you next week. on the Book Beat. And remember, all the shows are archived here at latalklive.com, where we are more than just talk.
We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hey everyone, this is Richard Carr, Business Relations Manager for LA Talk Live. Did you know social media produces almost double the marketing leads of trade shows,